Okay, so let's say an organization or a team, they get the assessment and they have all of this feedback. Um, what are the next steps? Like, how do you start to kind of unstuck or just get moving with the information that you have? Because a lot of times it feels good to get the information out. It feels good to get clarity, but that doesn't necessarily always translate to results, or it doesn't always necessarily translate to a new culture or a new type of working style. So what can teams do once they have the feedback to start to implement them? Or in specific, I guess more specifically, what can leaders do? Right? What can people do within their positions of power to use that information to the benefit of the team or the organization?
Right. Well, once those kind of floodgates are opened and the conversation is had over this 2-hour time period, I really ask people to not solution if they can during those conversations. So it's measured. The PSI, the Psych Safety Index, is 7 questions that they've filled out prior. It takes about 3 to 4 minutes to fill out, but it's divided up into 4 separate quadrants. And so I am busy both obviously jotting stuff down, digging into things as we go. But at the end, because we've digested so much stuff, to your point, Jay, like it can be really tough to remember at the end of that, like, ooh, it's like when you go to a retrospective and everybody just vents. So you have a moment where you can be in that position of power. Do we want to actually do something with what we talked about, or do we just leave and say we're good? Sometimes I think there are moments for that in retrospectives. I think it would be a big loss from a psychological safety index perspective to not take that conversation and do something with it. So I'll kind of give folks the whole spiel of like, here's all the data in front of your face about all the things that we talked about. Here are the high level things that I heard. If you could only change one behavior that you talked about here today, what would it be? Now they're in the position of power. Now they're the ones who are going to be able to move things, and they'll start digging in like, yeah, I think this was the most important thing. And the best things about these conversations is they will start saying, oh, well, I think that, don't forget that somebody said, let's not spin on a problem for more than 15 minutes because then we just end up wasting a bunch of time. I think that should be a part of this. I ask that teams not go more than 3 or 4 items, because then I come back, or Matthew will come back in 3 to 6 months to measure again. So what are the things that we want to work on? Now, usually with these engagements, sometimes we'll be continuing to coach or something like that, but the leader has all this information now. That person in the position of power has that information. They also know that the people on their teams are in a position of power too. This is something we all agreed to. I encourage folks to put it in their working agreements, put it in things that keeps it visible so that they can actually keep working on it. And then when we come back, we measure. And sometimes when I come back and measure, something else is lower because we've been focusing on something else. And that's okay. We're messy humans. We're not able to do perfect things right all the time. The purpose is not to be perfect. The purpose is to really understand how we work with one another and have honest conversations so that you can create great things and not have to worry about how you're showing up.
Interesting.